side on Green Street.
And 7 o'clock, I will call the council meeting and committee meeting session of Mechanicsburg Borough Council to order, and we will start with the zoning code hearing. And I'll turn it over to Solicitor Cassidy at this time.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is the time and place for a hearing, public hearing being conducted in compliance with the municipality's planning code for an amendment to the proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance. This hearing has been advertised in accordance with the requirements of the municipality's planning code. We received confirmation, I believe it was advertised twice.
Yeah, on the 19th and the 26th.
Thank you. So the purpose of the hearing is to reintroduce the proposed zoning ordinance, which has been to the Planning Commission, and to take public comment and answer any questions that council may have with respect to the proposed ordinance. I believe everyone on council is familiar with this proposed ordinance. It would amend Chapter 27, Part 7, Section 27-750 of the current ordinances to allow for tattoo establishments, which is a defined term, to be permissible in as a conditional use in the identified zoning districts. And in this case, it is eliminating the restriction of limiting tattoo establishments to upper floors of buildings located within the downtown district. By approving this ordinance, tattoo establishments will be permitted at the ground level commercial spaces within the downtown commercial district. The zoning ordinance does currently have separation requirements with respect to tattoo establishments in the downtown district. I don't have that in front of me, but I believe it's 1,500 feet separation between tattoo establishments in the zoning district as a conditional use. That's a summary of the ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
I have no questions.
Would that be the case? I'd open the floor for any public comments with respect to the proposed ordinance or any questions anyone might have. There being no questions, then, Mr. President, I recommend that this public hearing be adjourned.
Thank you. The public hearing will be adjourned, and we will call to order the council meeting and committee session. Start with pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
President Miller.
Here.
Vice President Anthony.
Present.
Councilwoman Egerton. Here. Councilman Booker.
Here.
Councilman Jerry.
Present.
Councilwoman Martin. Here. Councilman O'Neill.
Here.
Mayor Ritter.
Here.
Solicitor Cassidy.
Present.
Superintendent Huey.
Here.
Engineer Mendzinski.
Here.
Engineer Rogolski.
Here.
Chief Myers.
Here.
Chief Neff.
Here.
EMC Wardle.
Here.
Manager Szewski.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Is there anything to add or remove from the consent agenda or the regular agenda? Okay. Seeing none, any amendments or changes to the proposed minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion for the approval of the agenda? So moved. Mr. Anthony moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilman Martin seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The agenda is approved. On to citizens' comment.
I'll talk later.
Okay. Any other citizens' comment? Seeing none. Move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval of the items on the consent agenda?
I'll make that.
Mr. Councilman Booker makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilman Bureau seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The consent agenda items are approved. Moving on to the regular agenda. This is
Approval of ordinance 1176, amending chapter 27, part 7, section 27,750, conditions placed on the conditional use of a tattoo parlor. So moved.
Mr. Anthony moves. Is there a second?
A second.
Ms. Iverson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye. That has to be a roll call.
Oh, sorry, roll call vote. That's right. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Egerton?
Yes.
Councilman Anthony?
Yes.
Councilman Lucas?
Yes.
Councilman Jerry?
Yes.
Councilwoman Martin?
Yes.
President Miller?
Yes.
Councilman O'Neill?
Yes.
Yay, have it.
Yes, sir. Unanimously. Moving on.
Approval of a conditional employment offer to Jared Fleisch, Public Works Maintenance Employee, Public Works Department. He's a replacement, effective 5/9/2022, at a rate of $17 an hour.
So moved. Mr. Anthony moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bureau seconds. Any discussion? I thought the memo that we received was sufficient this time.
You're well done.
Well done.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Manager Cicero.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to Finance Administration Ordinance, Councilman Anthony.
Thank you. So our votes tonight, discussion on the Treasurer's report, that was presented, I believe, at the last meeting. Any thoughts, comments, concerns, for the Finance Committee? The only update that I have is that I did have a quick conversation with her asking how difficult it would be to show a budget year-to-date versus actual year-to-date, so that we would have a better picture financially of what's happening as we kind of roll through the year. I believe she said that it wouldn't be too difficult to do if we asked.
I had a conversation informally with her after your request, and she reiterated that. I thought that was a great idea.
Okay, all right. Can we make that a formal request?
There are multiple ways that Edmonds can also print that out, because the department heads get budget report monthly of where they stand. So we can get those printed out, and I'll get something to you guys so that you guys take a look at it. And then we can tweak it from there, make sure it shows what you guys want it to be.
Chairperson, a quick comment there. I would say that the more information that we can see that's easily printed would make our job of eliminating things rather than trying to add things much easier.
I agree. I would almost say too, how do you feel about
I
electronic?
would love electronic.
It's so that we're not wasting paper. How do you feel? Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
So if we do electronic, they can put as much information on there as they want to, and it's.
Would that be sprayed in a spreadsheet?
Edmonds doesn't, it will print a spreadsheet, but it gets huge. So what we do is we print what's called print to screen on Edmonds, and it creates a PDF that has columns and has things laid out. It's basically a budget transaction report. So you'll see the checks, you'll see what's coming out of what account, what line item, all the revenue as to where it was, what was approved for that line item, the percentage that you've used so far, and what's left to spend in that line item.
So Chairman Anthony, for my part, I have an easy time manipulating spreadsheets. Do you feel that you want the larger report spreadsheet format that you could then manipulate, or would you?
Apologies. I prefer Excel myself. I'm not sure how you feel. Are you okay with not converting it to a
We
PDF?
can give it a shot and see what it looks like. I mean,
Okay.
Edmonds does have a tendency to create a very, very long spreadsheet, so.
I've been mortgage lending. You should see some of my.
I use it for write the notes.
Not at all.
I use it to create write the notes, and it can get very, so.
Well, we'll look at it this way the first time,
Okay.
and if we feel like we want to modify.
That sounds great. And if there are particular columns that you think would be of special interest, then you can just tell us which columns those are.
Yep.
And then we can hide or.
I'll send it to you all, you guys can just look at it from there.
It might be overwhelming, but it's worth a try.
Yep, okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other comments on the treasurer's report?
It's nice to have.
Indeed. The next item is update on the 2021 Borough Audit Report. Do we know where we are with that?
I was told last week that they're getting there. That's, I asked, Nick where they were at, especially for the executive, letter that he's sent to, Chairman Miller. But I haven't heard anything. Friday, we had a meeting here with, a representative from Hamilton Musser, and she said they're working on it, but, she was actually one of the ones that was here to do the audit. She was here for the stormwater and sewer facilities exchange meeting. But they're working on it. That's the best that I have right now. We should be seeing it here hopefully real soon.
Okay. Next item is the update on the infrastructure borrowing. So just wanted to let everybody know that it is in the works as we discussed. It'll be available for us on the 24th, I believe, of May. Is that the right date for the new meeting? Yes, the 24th. That's right. Yeah. Any other comments, thoughts, concerns about that right now? I will not be able to be here on the 24th, but I will be here telephonically for that.
It's the 24th of this month.
Yes.
I too will be away for that. I'll make every attempt to be available telephonically. That may not be possible. I might be in the event.
Do we want to push it to the 1st of June so the entire finance committee can be here? Like a meeting in June? It shouldn't slow us down too much.
If it's not an inconvenience.
I believe it's an inconvenience. It's just a matter of us trying to get it done. So if two of us are going to miss it, then it's 2 weeks. It's not that big of a deal. Okay. I'll let them know. Okay. That'll help them out, actually. Update the government expenditures plan. I know that Manager Sikorski had something in our packet that was an update to the last one. I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to review it. We're not taking action on it, but are there any comments in general that you want to talk through right now, or how do we feel? That's the finance committee first, and the entire council as well. Did you have any thoughts, comments, concerns? So I'd like to maybe ask the entire council to take a look at it in its entirety, and maybe at the next meeting, in lieu of our presentation, we can go through this line item by line item to talk through with the manager. Would that be okay with you, Roger?
Absolutely.
The other thing I wanted to float there for council's consideration was that it would be a good idea to develop some criteria for what we want to spend this, for what this money should go for, and treat it like sort of a grant, like sort of a program that we're running to fund things like infrastructure or public safety or things like that, that we have a specific criteria that we're going to use this money for, and so we're not, there aren't too many hands in the pot, so to speak. And because I think it would be good to leverage the money for, like, for example, with the WalkWorks program, to take, to use those funds to, as the potential match for those grants, and then when we get that work done, then use the money, if we have anything, we can use the WalkWorks, if we are aware of the grants and we go through with the program, then we can use that to go further down the line and continue to leverage the money to get more grant money.
It multiplies your
Multiply the efforts.
In addition to that, one of the ideas that we've talked about a little bit in the past is hiring a grant writer. Someone that we could bring on board that would know what they're doing, find grants for us, pay for their own salary effectively in the first year and ongoing, and take some of the load off the staff of putting these things together for us and following through on them for us. So I'd like to have that conversation in conjunction, I don't know if that's my committee or not, but I'd like to have that conversation in conjunction with this conversation so that we can kind of make a plan that makes sense.
I'm glad you said that, I was about to say the same thing. Total agreement.
How do we proceed on something like that?
That was one of the manager's goals, was look at the HR as to where we stand. Chairman Miller's presented a link to an local HR firm that does evaluations, so we can have them come in and evaluate staff, see where we stand, totally outside, make sure our processes are up to where they're supposed to be, make recommendations as to staffing levels and stuff like that. So that's something also that we could do, look for the grant writing aspect of it. I know the fire department just hired one. She's in Georgia, I believe, Gary?
Yes.
So, but that's what she does, does the grant writing for them. That would be great. I mean, the walk work one is not that difficult. I think we can, between Nate, myself, Greg, and Greg has a colleague that has filed for these walk work ones. So I think we'll be in good shape with that. As a matter of fact, we have a meeting on that later this week. But, that one, I think it's a max of $25,000, so it would fall into this with the matching funds.
Yeah, what we should do when it comes to that is we should have a discussion with Engineer Rogalski and the Engineer Vizinski about what their firms can do for us in terms of grant writing within those fields, and parse that out and say, well, what are the other grants out there that we want to go out for, and, and then sort of get the word out, or start researching and figuring out who's out there.
Part of our issue is, I think part of our issue to that point is that we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
Yes, so to that point, since we're discussing this, I think it's a great conversation. Are we looking for outside counsel that not only will write the grants, but will help identify grants that may be applicable, versus having an in-house person who is good at filling out the paperwork? I'd be very interested to know what our cost would be on hiring counsel and I say counsel, not necessarily in the legal sense, but that would be able to point out grants to us that we might not otherwise have found. There's a lot of money out there.
There's a lot out there.
I think that was the vision that I had in my head, was that it was not necessarily an employee, that we would hire a person to do I believe that's probably what the fire companies did. I don't want to speak for you, Chief, but you hired somebody out of state because of their knowledge of what's available out there and their ability to fill it out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all based on, and she's already started to compile a vast amount of information before we go ahead and do that. But they specialize in grants of all types, and mainly, most of them is municipal related types of grants. So I think I provided that information for you folks if you'd like to follow up with that as an option.
I'd also be interested to hear what Solicitor Cassidy might know about other municipalities, who they're using, if they're using anyone. Do you have any off the top?
Yes, I do.
Have you?
So clearly when it comes to infrastructure, grant writing, your engineering firms are the go-to folks for that, whether you're talking about H2O money or whatever. But there are many other grant programs out there. One organization that I've worked with in the past that they really have their finger on the pulse of both state and federal grant money programs is Delta Development. Leroy Klein and Delta Development, Eric Clancy, they're located in Silver Spring Township nearby. So
We use that for the sewer plant.
Sorry.
Little clean water grant funds for the sewer plant. Delta is the one that we used out there, and they closed out the contract with that, so, but we're familiar with them.
Okay, that's the primary go-to grant writers that I've worked with municipal clients in the area.
And people have been satisfied with them?
Yes.
Can I ask another question? If this is bringing on a consultant, we don't need to go out with an RFP for bid. This is a non-bid scenario, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So we can do our own research and then decide what we're gonna do.
That's correct.
Is there an RFP style system where we could put word out that we're looking for counsel, fundraising counsel, if you were?
Certainly. So I think what Mr. Anthony said is this is not a competitively bid engagement. So, but there are RFPs that you go out and publish that and solicit proposals from various grant writers to come in. And you may find, by going through that process, that you'll find there are some grant writers that focus in certain industries or sectors more so than others. So there's no reason why you couldn't engage a number of different grant writers depending upon the type of money you're looking for.
Is there a template that we could use for that kind of RFP?
I don't have one off the top of my head, but I could find one.
Perhaps I could take a little initiative. Ms. Gary, do you know of any grant writing organizations that work, organizations like this that we might be able to look at?
Well, I worked with Delta in the 80s, started in the 80s. They were done. There are a lot of private contractors. I think the engineering suggestion is a good one, and economic development, big economic development organization.
It's good. Every county went through a process to engage a county-wide grant writer. They may be a resource, just thinking off the top of my head. And my only warning to everybody is that, you know, we have a dedicated grant writer on staff, but the reality is that they go find the grants and they, you know, match those grants up. It still falls on some staff member to gather the information that's required. So there is definitely a lift, whether you have somebody inside or outside, in terms of staff time to be able to, you know, pull it off. So no money is free.
Yeah, building on that, some of the expertise that our firms would have is, in addition to the grant writing process itself and identifying those programs, but really it's the administration then of those funds into the construction, what you have to supply to them to make the drawdowns, to close out the grants and keep yourselves in compliance, because obviously you don't want to have to forfeit any money, repay it, or preclude yourself from a future endeavor of receiving more grants. So I think that's really where the key that our firms, you know, we're really good at the things we do to help obtain those, but I think the administration process and guiding our clients through those terms and conditions is really what we do very well.
So the 3 steps would be finding the grants, applying for the grants, and administrating the grants.
I think those are a good key 3. There's probably other little ones in between, but yes.
So it seems like there might be counsel out there that would act in all 3 areas.
I think so.
It just sounds like something that we don't have the expertise to do in-house. All due respect to our very talented staff, but this is a very specialized area, and we're looking for big money, not 10,000, not 25, and not 100, right? We want big money. So if we can find that and bring it in.
Next steps. So I'm hearing 2 things. One is the grants that we're talking about that are outside of the purview of the engineers, and the engineers will be separately engaged, right? So we would want to talk through how do we do that, how do we engage your grant writers to be looking into what we need for what we need, and then secondly, the concept of either hiring somebody in-house that is a grant writer and will administer for us, or going outside to find a grant writing organization that will work for us, and then we are doing the administrative piece in-house. I think I capsulized everything properly.
Okay.
Next steps.
Would PSAB be a resource?
It's a great idea.
I'm sorry, Chief, PSAB.
No, State Association of Boroughs.
It went to a certain point. I mean, they're gonna look at administrative grants. I think what do we want to get the grants for? That's what we're looking at. I think that's what we need. And I mean, we can apply for anything and everything, but if we don't know what we're going to apply for, you know, it makes an application kind of worthless.
So this kind of goes with the comp plan, right? So as we're identifying stuff, we can identify where we want areas of focus
Yeah,
and then go that way.
Well, it's also budgeting, right? So as, in conjunction with the comp plan, and I agree with you 100%, we need to know what our budget looks like and go for things that are big dollars. We don't need the $10,000 solution, right? So we're,
But we have to know what projects and identify how to
Absolutely.
get there. Because the grants themselves, when you're writing them, are very intensive as to your plan
right.
and then the administration. So I think you have to have a plan, then identify where we want to go after, and then look for the grant writers. And I think we're going down that path. I think we're all saying the same thing.
Well, we had identified a grant. I think it's something that I brought to the attention of the council. It was the DCNR grant for the pool. And in order to do that, we needed to complete the pool feasibility study.
Right.
So, you know, would it have been helpful having a writer who had identified that and then also identified us the piece to help us get the money to do the feasibility study? Yes, I mean, that would have been helpful, but we're moving ahead with the feasibility study anyway. And hopefully in the future, we'll make that grant application when we have the feasibility study back to tell us exactly what we need in the future that we can put the grant money towards. And that's, you know, in the bigger picture, there's a lot of steps in between getting money for projects and getting, because like WalkWorks is that intermediate step. It's a feasibility, it's a study, and it's a policy. So once those are done, hopefully we'll get funded for that, but once those are done, then we can go and use those to apply for other grants that are out there that will be identified, hopefully, by the WalkWorks program. So that, there's multiple steps in the process.
I'm a fan of educating us on what's available. So, for example, would it be appropriate to have Delta come in and talk to us about what they do, what they offer? I'm sorry, Rebecca, you had a comment and we didn't get to it.
Go ahead, I'll.
So I was thinking, that would it be appropriate for us to help educate ourselves, to ask them to come in and give us the information that about what they do, how they do it, and then we can decide whether or not that would apply to what we're trying to get done? Or do we go out to other folks and kind of gather all that data before we have anybody come?
I think bringing Delta is a great first step. I'm very concerned about the workload we place on the office to try to administer this internally. In our private company, not that this is something I'll talk about publicly too much, but we've almost given up on grant funds from governmental sources because it's just too much of a hassle. In our case, with the dollars that we're likely talking about, I think it's not too much of a hassle, but we need expert help, and we certainly can't dump this on the in-house staff. This is overwhelming, I think.
agreed.
So are they able to collect the data? I guess we would probably have to talk to them about what their capabilities are as to lending that office support, or if we're looking at getting someone in-house to help support the grant writer.
Yes, supporting will be okay.
Might be a multiple person project.
I kind of like the idea, just sitting here right now, cursory, I like the idea of a firm that does this, that would have a larger staff, not just an individual somewhere who's writing grants.
I can see why that would be a thing. I'd have to be better educated before we make a decision.
Oh, yeah.
We can reach out to Delta and have them come to the first June meeting if that would work? Or do you want to wait and do it at the second June meeting?
We're gonna have the PFM folks here at the first meeting, so maybe we push them to the second.
We're doing this in committee.
I'm sorry?
We're doing this in committee.
If that's okay with the chair? Not the committee, but of the board.
Sure, that's fine, I can do that.
Any other discussion on this right now?
Exciting.
I believe, is that everything for me?
I think so.
All right, I guess that's right,
Okay.
Public Works Safety, so, I'll kind of, run through our agenda here for our committee. So the first one is, the sanitary sewer department reports from, Superintendent Huey and Engineer Mendinsky. I'm not sure, if there's anything you'd like to share.
Briefly, we just went through our DEP audit for the laboratory. Most of the findings look like they're going to be pretty precursory. We will get an additional method in our scope of accreditation for E. coli, which is something that DEP, Bureau of Clean Water, is going to be requiring us to do with our new permit when that's issued. We're going to have a public outreach event in a few weeks, planting a pollinator garden with a tour of the plant for the Master Watershed Stewards Group. And we're moving forward on a project to replace the screen at the headworks of the plant. With the additional use of wipes since the beginning of the COVID epidemic, we've been getting a lot of wipes and pulling them out of our pumps. It's using up a lot of manpower, it's creating a lot of wear and tear on the pumps. So we are going to install a screen to remove rags and other heavy items out of the wastewater stream so they're not going into the pumps. Originally, we did a budget in the fall of 2020 for this project. We budgeted $350,000. Costs of construction and materials have gone up substantially since then. We just received a CoStar's proposal in the amount of $425,000, so would be $75,000 over budget. With the 2022 budget, we did add an additional $60,000 for a cover, which is included in the scope of the proposal that was given to us. Additionally, because Silver Springs Townships and Monroe Townships have a stake in our plant, they would also bear a share of the cost of construction. The net cost to the borough would be within the budget of that project. And from there, I'll let Justin take over on the spring project.
Thank you. Good evening again, everyone. I did report at your April 5th meeting. At that time, we were still awaiting the PADEP, the Environmental Protection issuance of the permit. We've since gotten that, so that really kicked things into high gear to get this firm proposal for the CoStar's procurement equipment as well as the installation. We've been working with Cappy Associates, a firm that has done work in selling equipment here at the plant, as well as PSI. PSI is the contractor who would actually install the equipment, and they've done work at your plant as well. And we have received a firm quotation / proposal, which would be under the purview of the DGS CoStar's program. I did share this with Solicitor Cassidy. He and I met a little bit prior to the meeting tonight just to go over a few things. Relatively minor in the way of making revisions to the proposal, but they are important things to keep the borough compliant with things like municipal law, things like having bonding, making sure we comply with PA prevailing wage requirements, Pennsylvania steel products procurement, et cetera. So I'm going to be suggesting a couple of edits to this proposal that Curtis mentioned is here tonight. Such that for your second meeting of the month, you will have a firm proposal in front of you that will hopefully address all of the requirements of the municipal law. Solicitor Cassidy and myself will be able to recommend its approval, and ultimately we can execute then, the borough can execute an agreement with Cappy to have the screen installed. The lead time in terms of the delivery of the equipment, so they've been able to kind of whittle the schedule to the best of their ability. We're looking at roughly 6 weeks for the process of having submittals prepared and provided to us for review and approval. And then from the time frame they get the approved submittals, it's another roughly 16 weeks to fabricate and have the equipment delivered here to the borough's wastewater treatment plant. So it's likely a fall installation at that point, maybe pressing closer into some of the winter months. But based on some of the labor pains, if you will, that the staff have experienced up there, certainly recommend proceeding forward with this. And again, it is now fully permitted through DEP, and our design is fully complete with all the structural, electrical, and ancillary items necessary to install the equipment. So unfortunately, I can't be here for your second meeting due to another commitment I have, so I'd be glad to answer any other questions that you might have. I know you don't have this tonight in front of you because, again, it's not the final version that you'd be asked to consider recommending approval. I'll try and expand on anything so that your next meeting, if you so desire, you can move forward with that process.
How long does the screen last?
So typically, equipment of this nature, I would say it'll last about 15 to 20 years till complete replacement. There's going to be some wear and tear parts in between. One of the nice things about this particular unit and the things that they tout as a manufacturer is that there are very little wearable components down in the drink, if you will. Most of the things that the staff has to access for things like lubrication, maintenance, repair, they're all up out of the wastewater. The wastewater is the corrosive element, so this screen may find itself lasting a little bit longer than others that have those wearable components actually down in the nasty stuff. Okay.
So the value at $20,000 a year, the cost, that's to preclude these things to go into the pump, causing potentially more money to be paid to fix the pump, is that?
Correct.
I'm a mortgage guy, I don't understand this kind of stuff, so.
And in addition to the labor, when they certainly have things like impellers that wear out, motors that might go bad because they get bound by the rags, you're obviously expending then money on replacement parts. So luckily, I think a lot of times Curtis' staff is able to make those repairs. A lot of times he's had to have outside contractors come in and purchase materials that certainly then tends to increase it. It really is a common practice for this type of equipment to be installed at a facility the size of yours. It's kind of amazing you've been able to limp it along as long as you have without the need for it, but the need is definitely there.
So it was in the 2020 budget?
Correct.
Did we push it into 21 and then 22 as well, or was it dropped?
There was a delay because of COVID. We picked it back up. We were looking at one specific company that didn't come together. We looked at a grinder, and a grinder is what we have now. Our problem ends up being, we have a lot of brick manholes in the borough that are 70 years old, and every now and then, especially during heavy rains, we'll get a brick come through the plant, and that'll just bind up a grinder, it'll trip it, and it'll just create a mess. So a spring for us is a better option.
So it was in the 2022 budget?
It was.
Yeah, it is budgeted for. We met in November of 2021 with Cappy. That's when we started moving forward on this project.
Is there any estimate as to how much it'll save per year?
There's not so much of an estimate of savings. The cost to build our influent pumps is roughly $20,000 per rebuild. Those are 21 prices. I don't know what they would be at this point to have a pump rebuilt.
And how many times a year do you have to do that because of this issue? It's not so much it would be done yearly. It's going to be wear and tear over time. We've rebuilt 2 pumps since Hurricane Ida.
I think the complete replacement isn't something that you necessarily can anticipate being done every year, every other year, but they have found the nuisance part of it being clogged, if you will, needing to be taken offline and the labor exerted. Quite honestly, it's not a fun endeavor to do that. That has happened, I believe, with increased frequency, if I'm not mistaken.
That is an understatement. That is not fun. We're pulling rags out of the pumps roughly weekly.
Is there an education program that we could be more supportive of to getting education out to the community members? Are we sending stuff out to people to remind them not to flush?
That's a great idea. So one of my clients is a community that is basically a state university community, and they work with students from the state university to develop educational posters of the 5, 6 things you do not flush, and I won't tell you what's all on that list, but it's very important you don't flush it, right? And so they have actually done a pretty good job of working with the community based on the things that the students developed to then push that out to the community just as a friendly reminder, don't flush these things, because it ultimately costs everybody more cost at the plant when we have to make these types of repairs.
Do they share those resources with municipalities so we could push them out on social media and maybe our newsletter?
There are some things probably.
There's a few real good videos we can put out there to show people what we have to go through.
I don't want the gross stuff. I just think that's.
No, kind of.
People think flushable whites are flushable, and I know they're not.
Yeah.
Continental advertises those as flushable whites, you know, and there's a famous doctor that was on TV that encouraged the use of them, and, so that's kind of what we're facing. And what Curtis said, COVID put the project on hold, but it also brought the urgency of the project back because more people were at home and flushing whites for disinfecting and stuff.
So I'm just thinking, like, what can we do to save Curtis from getting the fun jobs all the time? If we can support some kind of education to slow it down.
Well, doesn't the screen do that?
Well, yes, but the screen's not gonna be put in until the fall, so we have, I think, an obligation to help until then.
That came out in the sewer bill some time back. There was some type of educational piece about not flushing white.
Yes, Curtis sent something out, we do that occasionally, we put it on the back of the sewer bill. The problem with it is, with us having rentals, the renters are not getting the sewer bills, the property owners are, and the property owners are not living in the borough, so if we can do something, you know, Facebook and stuff like that, yes, I think that's a good call to do. We haven't done anything on the back of the sewer bill for that for a while, so that could be something that we get, the ladies to work on for next quarter, so.
And I think as Borough Council, we'd all be willing to post something on social media about not flushing gross things down the toilet. You give us the list, well, we'll make it.
So, not to be a dead horse, I'm just looking for a talking point here. Just any kind of estimate on labor and costs of what this system is going to save us a year. I mean, you're talking about 1,000 hours of labor a year to address this issue, 100, 10,000, I know it's unpleasant, but.
Maybe you could bring that back to us when,
Yeah,
when us a day.
Okay.
Well, there's a safety aspect to this too. These guys are sticking their hands with, I mean, hopefully puncture-proof gloves into a pump that, up to their shoulder, and pulling this stuff out. So from an administrator's side, there's a safety aspect to this too, that, the screener is gonna help, you know, keep our costs down and stuff like that. We have enough, you know, accidents that happen on a daily basis. Unfortunately, knock on wood, we've been fortunate that nobody's really been injured badly doing this. But there's always a potential there because you don't know what somebody's flushed down the toilet or, you know, so, when you open a manhole and it's full of asphalt because somebody dumped asphalt down the manhole, that kind of tells you that, oh yeah, there's some of the stuff that we find in the sewer system. Curtis could tell you stories, and you would say he's making it up.
So just to clarify my line of questions, I'm not opposed to the project. I just would like to know what the economics are. I want to know if we're saving $10 a year or 100,000 or what we're saving a year. That's all. It's an estimate, nothing that takes a lot of time. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Two questions. One, how is it possible there's only 6 things you're not supposed to flush?
I think the list could be bigger.
The second one is there a warranty on the screen?
Typically, the equipment does come with a standard, I believe this one had a 2-year warranty. At one point, there was some discussion about an extended warranty. That does typically increase the price. I believe it was a 2-year warranty that comes with this. And then most of those times, any of the contractors' work has a 1-year correction period. So if something were to be found defective during that 1-year period after it's deemed substantially complete, they have the requirement to come out and do the labor and things necessary to repair. And then the screen obviously has its manufacturer's warranty. So I believe it's 2 years here on this particular equipment. Double check that to make sure. I know my designer was talking about potentially an extended warranty on a specific component to it, but I'm not sure if that was ultimately in here because it was a little bit of additional cost.
So this is a screen you've used in other municipalities and they're happy with the product?
Yes, this is one that we've actually now installed a couple different times at different municipalities, some larger, some even a little bit smaller. It is one that we would recommend.
Last question, I apologize. So are the other municipalities that are going to be putting money into this, do they need to have this conversation with you as well, or are they just going to sign off on it?
Other municipalities. Silver Spring and Monroe Township. It is part of their agreement. We basically, at the beginning of the year, let them know we are planning to do this capital project, and give them an estimate of what the cost will be.
So an update.
So they're just bound that they.
Yes.
There's sewer engineers in the room, and they are both aware.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot you were here.
Thank
So
you.
just for clarification, is this something the council's going to have to approve, or is it already approved in the budget? And this is just a report that it's going to be executed
It'll come to council for approval.
for approval, but it's already in the budget?
Money's in the budget, but we're still gonna approve it.
Approved it, okay, so it has not been approved yet, we're spending, I got you, okay. Thank you.
Are the municipalities paying a percentage or a fixed amount?
It will be a percentage proportional to the flow that they have secured at the borough's plan.
So that'll shoulder the cost of the increased price.
That's correct.
Thank you. Well negotiated.
I did not negotiate.
Or did I, but someone did a good job of it.
All right, anything else to note for your, the sanitary sewer department or?
Only one or two very minor things yet. We have received some of the record drawings from Landmark for the Phase 3 sanitary sewer facilities that they've constructed, contractor red lines, just of the as-built conditions. So we're currently reviewing those. And just some minor things, routine things that we help Curtis with at the wastewater plant upon request. But the screen project is probably the largest thing we're working on concurrently.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Public Works Department report, Engineer Volsky.
Two items to report. The borough was informed by the EPA, the federal EPA, we're gonna be audited, in terms of our MS4 program. They came out, did their inspection, probably about a week ago at this point in time. At least preliminary, it feels like we did pretty well, in terms of our inspection, so that's good news. Some things to work on, a little bit of, education in terms of, some new personnel on site, which was expected, just given that we've had a lot of new faces in the last couple of years, so that went over relatively well. Second item, the GIS project, we had our staff training last week, the system itself is up and running, and also the, I'll call it the mobile, app component of it on the iPads, got all that together, same thing functioning. Nick came out and did some training for Curtis and Roger and CH. So, the next phase of that is really now the data collection phase. So in terms of, we talked a little bit about that, whether or not we need some assistance to do that, but summer's coming, that's time to do it. So certainly we're available to help you start picking that information up if needed. And I can give an update on the capital improvements report when we get there, or improvements plan when we get there.
All right, thank you. All right, so that moves us into our committee items of Public Works, or on Public Works. So the first one is an update on the transfer of sanitary sewer and stormwater assets and termination agreements. Solicitor Cassidy.
Yes, so I can provide a quick update. So we had a meeting last Friday, I believe it was. Right. Representatives, Lisa Coyne, Solicitor Coyne, on behalf of the authority. Annie Miller, who serves as chair of the authority, and representative from the auditor and the borough treasurer. And we had a very, I would say, productive meeting. We had a chance to sit down and talk about the structure of the relationship between the borough and the authority when it comes to the ownership and operation of the stormwater system. Coming out of that meeting, and based upon a number of comments from authority members, there are a few tweaks to the lease agreement that we'd like to wrap into the lease agreement itself. And so the bottom line is that I anticipate bringing the lease agreement back to council for a reapproval, if you will, based upon these revisions. There's nothing substantive, I would say, in terms of the changing the nature of the relationship between the borough and the authority. The changes to the agreement are simply for clarification purposes. So I think, again, it was a very helpful meeting, and I think it really set the stage for moving forward and finalizing the arrangement between the borough and the authority.
Thank you.
So, Sir Cassidy, do you want to address, just, we will have to take action again on some of the other resolutions to be retroactive to.
Yes, it's another thank you, President Miller. One of the issues that we discussed is making the transactions, with respect to the conveyance of assets, but really the lease agreement itself, retroactive to January 1. That's really going to assist both borough staff and the auditor when it comes to tracking monies that we're passing between the two entities. It'll make for a much cleaner audit for 2022 when the time comes. So there will be some additional documents that we'll be bringing back to council in addition to the lease agreement for approval. That's all I have.
Thank you. Update on the Walkworks grant application.
The letter of intent was submitted, until the 13th, and as I mentioned earlier, Engineer Rogalski, one of his colleagues, Nate Wardle and myself, we're gonna talk about what we're seeing, what we're gonna put on the submission for the 13th, and then, kind of at the direction of Chairman Miller, we're gonna try to go after two, the active transportation plan and the Vision Works, Vision Zero, program to see if we can get that. There is some match money that's required, and one of the things that we looked at was we're not necessarily in what the Department of Health calls the at-need groups, so we'll see what we can get. We're going to try to get everything we can. So they're very small, 5,000 words and 2,500 word written notices, so we'll see where it goes from there. So that's where we're at on that.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee for either Roger or Solicitor Cassidy on these first two items? All right, we'll move on. Manager memo on the LED streetlight conversion.
Yeah, one of the things that was on the manager's goals for 2022 was to consult with PP&L and begin the discussions for this. Over the years, as I've looked at this, I know 7 years ago it was not cost effective at all for us to do this, but it has slowly come around. You see the savings there of $300. That's based on this month's utility bill for the streetlights. So as we go over the summer and night becomes much shorter, that number, that $300 a month is going to go down. But then come winter, it's going to go back up. So the fall, like I said in the memo, the springtime and the fall are the best 2 months to use to try to do this because they're kind of average. I did not formally approach PP&L. This is all done with information off their website. The $5,667 is an upfront cost because we do have some, what they're considering upgraded lamps already in the Borough of Mechanicsburg. So they'll have to, when they change those out, PP&L will do all the work. But that's the $5,000 is the upfront cost. That's all we would have. And based on the $300 a month average savings, in a year and a half, we would make that back. So we do not own the lights that are up there. PP&L owns them. We pay, with the LEDs, we'll pay $14.31 a month for 775 lights. So that's why our light bill is as high as what it is. But that's where we can start. I know that was a goal that was on the, like I said, the manager's report. And I guess kind of looking for a feeling from council, do we want to proceed with this? It'll change the lights to white. There's some that are not going to be quite as bright as what they are now, but there'll be LEDs, and we should start seeing the savings on them.
So with the white lights for any of our shade trees that are throughout the borough, that's my only concern, because I do know that light for some trees will burn. And I can't remember his name, but the light bulb expert.
Yes, Mark Gross.
Yeah.
Yes, you know. he will probably be in to address council when this gets out, where this is what we're looking at doing. When the schools were approved, he was most upset because, he's also an amateur astronomer. And the LEDs affect the vision of what you're seeing at night. They're dark skies. However, with these street lights and the PP&L, it's a more directed down look. As a matter of fact, there's two on Strawberry Alley behind Mr. Buick's buildings, that somehow they got replaced. He doesn't know how they got replaced. I didn't ask for them to be replaced, but they are LEDs.
Okay, who
Lights in there.
replaces the light bulbs? Do we replace them, or does
No,
you know?
they're all, we don't own them, and actually, we're not allowed up there because they are high voltage.
Okay.
If I may, so the lights, the PPLs are wonderful to work with. When we've had a light bulb out, we've just called them with full number, they've gotten it replaced in lightning speed. The light is cleaner, it's more modern looking. In our opinion, it has a higher perception of safety. There's nothing negative about the changeover that we've seen in Strawberry. It's been fantastic. Now, in full disclosure, I went to Roger with this 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, about 7 years ago.
At one of the points where he was evaluating this for borough-wide, and it wasn't feasible at that time, but it's been wonderful. It's just a very nice, clean, modern, feels very safe, very bright, and it hasn't been there's been no disadvantage to any of the residents. You know, no one's complaining about lights and windows or driving it better.
So the lights,
Very much so.
and the schools go out like this.
The school has uplights on the side of the building, and out in Orchard Crest and down around Darla and stuff like that, they have those orange teapot lights is what they look like. They look like a Chinese lantern, all right, or a Japanese lantern with the metal thing on the top. They're orange, and, you know, we've done candle power. I had Greg come in and do candle power studies on different ones. I've got the app on my phone. We looked at different ways. The candle power underneath those LED lights is the same as what it is under some of those orange ones. So, you know, it's not that the fact that they're brighter, it's the fact that it's a different color. And white is clear.
Well, and I like lights for safety. So has EAC had an opinion over the LED lights?
I mean, this is a new.
I think he has an approach.
Yeah, this is a new agenda item, so I don't have anything to report on that. I know that, lights in the municipality and impacting dark skies, et cetera, is something that's a passion, for the EAC, so I think it would be interesting to see what kind of information they'd like to, some input they'd like to put on the transfer over to LED streetlights.
I like saving money, and I also like.
I love saving money,
There's a lot of dark areas in the borough when you walk with the lights we have now, so I just wanna make sure the environmental impact is looked at too.
Fixtures are nicer looking too. Roger, quick question, is there any negotiation room on the $5,000+ with PPL or any?
No, I think that's based on the fact that there's an upfront cost estimate, because of some specific lights that were put in. Now, I'm not sure exactly which ones those are, but if you look on the map that's included, right in the middle, and Rebecca, forgive me, but these are your Strawberry Alley parking lot lights. There's some, you'll see the stars that are in there. Those are special lights and light fixtures. There's apparently some other ones in town. They don't really identify them real well on here, but there are other lights in here that are special lights that they'll have to order to retrofit the LEDs in them. So that's why the $5,000 is there. But for 775 lights, it's not a bad deal.
I also think it's important to take advantage of this program while it is still around. We're never guaranteed that this is always going to be an option. And I, like Councilman Buick, have approached Managers Association about this in the past. And earlier this year, it was definitely on my priority list to look into, and that's how it made it onto the goal sheet. And I I think it's a great thing for safety in terms of, the lighting in the borough and the perception of safety. And, of course, we do have to be environmentally conscious, but I do think that LEDs, especially when directed downward, can improve light pollution, rather than make it worse.
There's a lot of, Googling, here's my sign, but they do say that there is some good environmental, things that happen, carbon dioxide being one of those, insects reducing them by 50%. But the blue bright light is the one that hurts wildlife and leaves, so, yeah, these. And there are studies that say that people will have more seizures underneath blue bright light. So I don't think that's gonna be the impact, but I think we just need to make sure when we're doing it, that we're looking at the trees and maybe tree trimming so that they're not singeing from that, but, yeah.
Carlisle has gone through this program, and they've gone through, I think, a multi-year program to get this done. So
Well, yeah, and this won't be a 2-week project. This will take quite a while, and it's gonna take a while probably to get through with PP&L. They're suffering the same thing we all are, is staff shortages, so.
I think it's best that we get ourselves on this list.
I can do that. It's a click of a few buttons tomorrow to get that done, so.
Then you'll talk about it.
Yep.
Yep, perfect.